Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to India's space program, one would say that in post-colonial India, it's the most powerful example of India's modernity, statehood, as well as national prestige. And as far as Bharat next decade is concerned, this is the very domain, I would say, that has achieved excellence. They've set a new bar altogether with a moon mission, and also you have the space station. So today, undoubtedly, at the helm of affairs is a man who has an extraordinary story of resilience, hope, and triumph over adversity. Mr. Somnath, thank you very much for joining us and taking out the time. Let me straight away begin by asking you, Bharat next decade. I think so this question suits the most to ISRO because the lineup that you have is extremely exciting for every Indian today. What is it that we are really looking at?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Without talking too much about the initial comments, then I would like to straight to tell you, if you look at the India in the next decade, I see it as a tech-savvy nation. Its future determined by the application of technology in different domains of our life. And then making an impact in the society, especially with the technology in the domains of digital engagement, space, agriculture, then the critical technologies that decides our future, which includes the artificial intelligence, the genomics, the material sciences, the electronics revolution, and all of this put together. So if I look at the application of space sector in all of them, I think the space sector has been one torchbearer in showcasing an example to this country that it is possible for India to make its own path, her own path in the domain of space technology, to do it in different manner than that others did. I think all of you know the history of our space domain has been different from other nations. Where the many other powerful nations started the space program by developing the arsenal in their stock and slowly moving to the launch vehicles, the satellites, and the applications. And we went in a different direction, bringing about applications first and then creating the capability for launching and deploying them later. And similar example has been seen in the missions like Chandrayaan-3. We were able to engineer a mission with very, very low budget, I must say, not really an approach which is very, very innovative, using a launch vehicle capability which is just available there for you to do the mission, and then the mission strategy and planning to reach you up to the moon and land it very, very carefully, where others have difficulties during this time frame. So it showcased the capability within India to do such missions. So what I foresee in the next decade is that we should be able to develop an ecosystem of technology implementation for the life of every Indian citizen in a manner that other country has not yet done.
Mr. Somnath, there are few images that every Indian, perhaps in this room, will never forget. Images of rockets being brought on a bicycle. Then you have had bullock carts that were used to move around. And of course, every Indian was aggrieved when there was this cartoon that was put out by the Western media, that elite club. I would say, and every Indian in this room would say, that today ISRO has smashed the door of that elite club. And if it is possible, it's because of you and your team. So I want to ask you today, take the opportunity of asking, what is it that you would tell those who try to demean Indians, and how has the journey been? The journey, I would say, is fantastic, but we want to hear it from you. What's been the journey for you and your team?
See, for people like us in the space domain, the technology domain, I think those narratives were entirely different. I think those cartoons that you are referring to are in another sector of the society, section of the society. We don't understand each other, I must tell you. We people in the space, we have been talking to all the power players in this domain, the Russians, the Americans, the Europeans. And possibly you may know that Sarabhai, when he started the whole space program in 60s, we were nowhere. We were just launching small rockets. But he was able to influence the Russians, the Americans, and the French and bring the rockets during the ages of the Cold War to India and then make a launch from here. The rockets came from the US, the computer came from Russia, the infrastructure for that came from France, and we were able to integrate all of that and then make a launch. So that's the power of that he displayed at that point in time. And we continue to do the same. Even today, they respect us very well. And though those ridiculing that is happening in some other sector of the society, I think let us not worry too much about it. Those who understand the domain respect each other. And there is great amount of respect even during the times of Chandrayaan-3 from NASA, from the Europeans, from the Russians. And they have been calling and telling us, and they have been sending us congratulatory letters for the accomplishment that we have. So we always had a very high level of recognition and respect from all those who have new space technology.
Talking about some of these specific projects, missions that are coming in, I think so every Indian would be very excited when the Prime Minister actually spoke about, announced the names of the 4 astronauts, and everyone wanted to know who they are, the journey it has been, because a lot of people do not know that during this entire mission, the kind of hurdles that ISRO had to face, COVID pandemic being one, Russia-Ukraine war being the other. What is it that we are really looking at, Mr. Somnath, in terms of the Gaganyaan mission? Because everyone would want to know about it.
I must tell you that the Gaganyaan program is something quite different from a typical rocket launching and putting a satellite in orbit. So we are dealing with human beings now. And the complex nature of dealing with human beings in a mission like a space mission is still being understood by us, I must admit. Though that we are very, very encouraged to work on human space program, but we started. We are hoping that we will be in a position to acquire certain amount of technology from people from other nations who have this technology. But then it was not forthcoming in the way we expected, I must admit at this moment. And we thought that we will be in a position to get elements like the environmental and life support system, which handles the oxygen supply, the water supply, the temperature control, and many other parameters that you control for the comfort of the astronaut inside. And the whole technology is not forthcoming. And we were asked now to develop our own environmental life support system. And there are many elements like this. The spacesuit, the crew escape system, the computer system which will find out whether there is an anomaly going to happen in the rocket and then take an action for aborting them. Training, simulators, the medical capability that we have to understand the physical, the physiological and the psychological aspect of an astronaut and select them and manage them. I think all these skill sets we were not having, I must admit. And we thought that we can always go there and get help from many, many people. And of course, they are helping. But many of those help will come at a cost and at a time they decide. I think that doesn't go with us, our schedule. So our original schedule of meeting the goal of having the human space mission is affected definitely by the availability of this knowledge. So we decided that anyway, the time is lost because of the COVID. Of course, COVID created a little bit of disruption in terms of manufacturing, getting many of the materials. Now we have to buy quite a bit of complex electronics parts and many other materials from the foreign sources, and they were not forthcoming. And some of them we had to do it our own way of doing things. So now we have reset the timeline for the first launch of the crewed mission to 2025 end. And this year we are trying to complete all the development activities of all those systems which I just mentioned. Then conduct unmanned or uncrewed missions, at least 2 of them, or maybe 1 more. Then also demonstrate the abort scenarios, which one of them which we have just done. Then also do hundreds of similar tests in this year and early next year to give the confidence to have the crewed mission by the end of 2025. So I must tell you at this moment that it's a really challenging enterprise. First of all, we have no experience of sending human beings to space till now. And we are talking to those people who are in this domain, like our Rakesh Sharma, who had the fortune to travel in one of the mission. And he is one who gives us a lot of information from his perspective of understanding. But there is different layers of understanding. I must tell you that an astronaut layer of understanding, a technocrat's level of understanding, a certification or authorizing the whole system for launch, and that level of understanding, it's all differ. So we are collecting the best brains in this country, including Air Force and various institutions, to come together and help us to build this capability. And there are many countries helping us. Of course, I must tell you that France is helping us in a big manner, especially with the medical aspect of human spaceflight. The doctors who are dealing with astronauts in France came to India. They helped us in training and in creating the basis guidelines. And we are having now engagement with NASA, and they are going to take one of our astronauts in their flight in ISS, which will definitely give us some exposure to the way they handle astronauts and then prepare them before the launch. And all these are very important. So if everything goes very well, I am very sure by 2025 end, we will be able to make the launch. Of course, and we will not make the launch on 2025 if anything goes wrong in the travel towards that point. Like encountering failures, encountering serious design deficiencies. We will have to reset the timeline, of course, because life is very, very important, and we don't want to take the risk of causing any injury to any of our astronauts.
So we are looking at a manned mission by 2025, ladies and gentlemen. I think so that's the big news now coming in. And I think so at the hands of Mr. Somnath, I would say, there was a point in time when the International Space Station, to get a part of it, or to be a part of the International Space Station, India was jostling for it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister has already announced that we are looking forward to our own International Space Station. Nothing can be more bigger than this. So why not a little bit about the space station that India is looking forward to, and the Atmanirbhar concept to it. I think so, nothing more. No other sector has achieved as much as the Prime Minister would say, Atmanirbharta, as much as it's happening in ISRO.
See, I must tell you that after the Chandrayaan-3 successful landing, our Honorable Prime Minister took a review of our program, and he was very, very happy with the type of accomplishment that we have in terms of mastering the technology required for soft landing on the moon. And his confidence on us has been so high that he said, so let's have a plan for next 25 years on what you really want to do in the space sector. We have been continuing to build our communication satellites, remote sensing satellite, and various applications, delivery. I think this will continue. That's a regular type of work which is required to be done. But there must be a very inspiring, with and type of program that is more visionary in nature. So this is the first time in the history of ISRO, a 25-year-long roadmap has been developed by the advice of our Honorable Prime Minister. And it has four key elements. First thing is, the human spaceflight program, which we call Gaganyaan, is going to continue. It's not going to be a one-time event. There is no point in sending an Indian to space and show that, yeah, we have achieved something majestic. But it must really deliver something back. No, we see that access to space by human beings are so crucial for various technology elements. For example, we look at material science, we look at drug discovery, you look at additive manufacturing in humans or organs, or if you want to look at biogenomics domain, microgravity experiments become very, very important. And this requires human beings to be present to organize experiments and do measurements and bring back those samples in a healthy condition for us to analyze in the ground and then give some outcome. So there is hundreds of such experiments taking place in the International Space Station today from various countries. Unfortunately, in India, this domain is still to catch up, and I believe it will really happen. So the goal of the Bharat Antarikshya Station is to connect the human spaceflight program and the demand for new technologies that will come out of the microgravity experiments. And once you have a space station like that, this should be possible for us to send Indian scientists up there and conduct experiments to serve those sectors of the industry. So we believe it's not just going to show that we have an international station like others, but to deliver an economic benefit out of it. The second element is to continue the scientific exploration that we have been doing so far. That's the Chandrayaan series, we did the Mangalyaan, we did the AstroSat. So these are low-cost scientific experiments that we have been able to do and really bring out substantial scientific outcome. So we are now thinking about a series of missions to moon, because moon is a new area where it's emerging in every sector, and the new moon economy is now taking shape all around. And we don't want to be left behind. So this is the second domain of it. The third is the human access to moon and make an Indian land on the moon. And it is an iconic element of the whole of this vision. Why we say it's not just landing a person on the moon. Taking him up to there requires so many technologies need to be developed. For example, our launcher capacity must substantially increase. Today we have only 4 tons to GTO capability. It's not enough. We need to have something like 30, 40 tons of mass lifting to a low Earth orbit capability if you really want to send a human being to moon. And once you do that, once you create that capability, your space station building will automatically happen. Let's understand the connection between these two. So the human access to moon, the higher payload capability, building space station, scientific discovery in and exploring other planets like Moon, Mars, Venus, etc. They are all connected in a manner which will improve the technical capability of space sector, which will improve the economic benefit out of it. It will also give opportunity for industries to work in this sector and to have an economic activity in and around the space sector. So this is all connected in a manner that the overall space sector, which is now opened up after the 2020 announcement of the opening of the space sector, will really bring in a lot of activity in this sector.
Since you talk about opening up the space sector also and the kind of presence that we currently have, there was an argument, Mr. Somnath, that if we are opening it up, FDI, in the space sector, then you're essentially looking at more control from the foreign players. Is that a cause of concern, or would you say that this is pure fear-mongering that was essentially done?
This comes out of the non-understanding of the economics of space activity. See, today the overall space economy is sized approximately 500 billion US dollars. Out of that, almost 70% of the business or the financial activity that is taking place is around the applications or is around the hardware that are required for the ground operations, connectivity, network, and various other things. Around 15% is for building satellites, and rest is for only rockets and launch vehicles. So the overall economy is driven by application rather than the high-end sort, where the investment is very high, the return of investment is low. The rocket building and launching is not a very profitable business if you are not very good at like SpaceX. The satellite building and launching is the next profitable opportunity, but the bigger profitable venture is in terms of applications. For example, image processing and using communication services, navigation and timing services, weather-related services, etc. So if you really look at these three sectors, the launching sector, the satellite sector, the application sector. So in the FDI, what we have done is the application sector is now 100% automatic. That means whoever wish to invest in the application sector are welcome to India and then create their capability. So what really means is that in India and in around India, there is so much of markets available to create the possibilities of applications and then generate the activities around it. So when you create an economic activity around the applications, naturally the demand for satellites will increase. And now in the satellite sector, we are not allowing FDI to come automatically up to 100%. So that is regulated. It's only up to 74%. So now the activities on satellites increases, then naturally the demand for launches will increase. And the launcher side, the FDI is limited to only 49%. So the foreign players cannot directly come in and then build rockets here. It's possible only by government route only, where we do the due diligence on who is coming and who are going to be the players. So we have demarcated the sectors very clearly, the launcher sector, the satellite sector, and application sector, and the FDI bounds have been put appropriately so that our interests as a nation are not compromised.
I also want to take the opportunity of asking you about Chandrayaan-3, because Chandrayaan-1 threw up the possibility of ice molecules. What is it that the world does not know about the findings of Chandrayaan-3? Mr. Somnath, we do have a habit of getting some breaking news. I'm hoping that you would be able to share with us what the world does not know about the findings of Chandrayaan-3.
See, on the Chandrayaan-3, our target was to land on the southern side of the moon, very closer to the pole. And everybody is interested in the south pole of the moon. I think all of you know why it is so. Because that area is not well sunlit, and there is 14 days of day and 15 days of night there. So because of that, the structure of the moon is well preserved there, unlike the equator domain where there is better sunlight, and then the possibility of measuring and finding water, minerals, and many other things are much better off in the southern pole than in the equator. So when we went there and did the measurements using the 5 of our instruments, there were many interesting findings. I think the most surprising things are to be kept as a surprise because it's to be done. It is to be done by the scientists, not by me. Because there is a set of moon scientists working on this data, and they have some observations, of course, I must tell you, but they have to corroborate with the other findings. There are experiments which are done on the ground and the measurements coming from there. For example, one of the important finding was that there will be huge amount of dust there. But when we went there, we found there is no dust like what we expected to happen in the equator. And you would have seen the rover moving around, and then the clumps of materials were coming out, not in the form of dust. Then there must be a surprising question why there is no dust there and why dust was seen in the Apollo landing. I think you all know that we have seen those videos of other landings. There was enough dust, but there is no dust there. The presence of water, which is much more abundant than the equator, or something else that is happening there. We also found that the atmosphere of the moon at that time, though you know that there is no atmosphere there, but there is an electron and a charged particle atmosphere. It's much different from that we expected. So there are surprising things, but for time being, let me not disclose, because it has to come in a peer-reviewed journal, and normally in scientific domain, it's not just announced like a chairman coming and telling you there is something surprising here. So we go through a process of peer review, and people in that domain should certify that what you are speaking is true. And once that is done, we will definitely announce.